various Christmas movies to figure out why they speak to us so well. I don't know about you, but I love this. I just love Christmas movies. I just do. There's something about it's nice outside, but it's too cold to be outside, and my couch seems extra comfy that time of year. And then we can just watch endless Christmas movies one after another. But I think the reason that these stories speak to us is because they capture some part of humanity that God created that he would fulfill or echo. And for centuries, Christians have been celebrating 4 central themes during Advent, or Advent's kind of that Christmas season. 4 central themes, and they were hope and peace and joy and love. And today we're talking about one of my favorite movies, Home Alone, and this concept of peace. Now, a couple things for you guys to understand. When Home Alone came out in 1989, I was 10 years old. That makes me 36 today. Now, thank you. Okay, it makes me 36 today. I was 10 years old. Kevin McAllister is 8 years old in that movie. And so when I'm seeing this precocious, mischievous kid really just kind of stick it to some meddlesome adults, part of my soul healed. I got happy. I was like, there's hope for all of my ADD right now. It felt good. But as I've gotten older, there's a different aspect of that movie that connects with me. And it's the need to go to your room and be away from everybody else. It's that quest for peace and quiet. And I'm just watching this movie because I did my homework and I rewatched Home Alone. And I don't know if you guys did this as well, but there's this angst. Remember when the kids are just running up and down the stairs and Joe Pesci, the burglar, is dressed as a cop, and he's like, do you live here? Are your parents home? Are your parents home? And like it's crazy. And I sensed that in my bones. And then when they're like, Kevin, go to your room, and he's like, well, I don't want to sleep on the bed with Fuller because if he has anything to drink, he's going to wet the bed. And so he gets sent up into the attic, and they have that like showdown with his mom, and his mom is just saying, Kevin, why can't you calm down? Why can't it be easier? Kevin, there's so much disorder that you've caused, but there's disorder all around him, so he's reacting to the disorder of this family, of 3 families trying to make their way to Paris, and he, you know the scene. And then he's sent upstairs, and he goes, I hope you're gone when I wake up. And he slams the door to a really cool-looking attic, and then he goes upstairs, and that's it. And I get that. Because there are points already in the Christmas season where I'm like, hey, why don't y'all go for a walk? I don't really, I'm like, I don't really nap in my bedroom because that just feels weird to me. I'm a couch napper. And so I'm like, hey, why don't y'all leave the house? Like there's just this part of me that wants to be alone. And then when I'm standing in lines, which are kind of made even worse because now there's social distance lines. So you're like, is that a really, really long line or is that a properly distanced line? And then, of course, you're going to social distance and someone's going to, like, not social distance behind you. Like, that's, like, an awkward thing. So you're, like, throwing elbows. Okay, you get it. You want space and you want peace. And I think that's what we're all craving and wanting. And that's what Kevin wanted, and that's what his mom wanted. And you watch, and everybody wants the same thing. They just want to get rid of all this disorder. And that's the question this morning is, what causes all this disorder? That when you're trying to get through Trail of Lights, and it's a mile long, and people are driving and cutting in, and you're like, what's causing that disorder? Or when you're trying to get the Christmas dinner ready and things are taking longer and an oven went out or somebody forgot to turn it on or it's the wrong temperature or whatever, and there's just that disorder. And you feel all that angst and all that peace, and it just seems to evaporate. What causes disorder? Other people's selfishness causes disorder, right? For Kevin, he's not creating any chaos. His family is. And his mom, she's not creating any chaos. Her children are. And Buzz is creating chaos. All right? If you watch the sequel, you can see just how bad that guy is. Okay, anyway, here's the deal. What causes disorder? It's other people's selfishness. You get this? Somebody cuts in line, you're like, my peace, my shalom is kind of robbed because that person was selfish. right? Or why do we have to have potatoes 5 different ways? Oh, because this person wants it that way. Or why do we have to cook a turkey and a ham and a brisket and a prime rib, and then we still have to throw chicken nuggets in at the last minute? It's other people's selfishness. And what is our answer for other people's selfishness? Our own selfishness. Everybody else is cutting in line. Well, then I'm going to cut in line. Kevin didn't want to ruin the Christmas vacation. He just wanted his own little piece of peace. And mom did not want to have this huge rift between her and her son. She did not want to leave her son at home. She just wanted a little bit of peace. And so what happens is when we see all this disorder happening, other people's selfishness running rampant, what we start to think for ourselves is oh, it's my turn to be selfish. If I'm going to have any peace and quiet this year, I'm going to have some, what time? Me time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of me time. But it's weird that we call it me time when what you really want is peacetime. And if we're not careful, the holidays look like a festive, hungry hippo thing of people trying to get their little piece of it. See, unfortunately, our path to peace and quiet is often through selfishness. Oftentimes, our strategy, when we've had it up to here, when we're like losing it, when we just can't, we're pulling our hair out, or we're trying to grow hair to pull it out, or whatever it is, like when we're just, our path is often through selfishness. I need time. I need this. I need to get it my way. I need. The problem is that might work for you, but what causes your disorder, what causes your lack of peace is other people's selfishness. So then you respond with selfishness, which causes disorder for somebody else, and you can see how this can be a mess, and before you know it, the holidays are just exhausting. But there might be another way. You see, when we encounter disorder, our response is often one of 3 things. We often respond with either isolation, indulgence, or to placate. That's usually what we do. In other words, something happens, it's too noisy, it's crazy, I've had enough, and so we isolate. And we see Kevin do that. He isolates into the attic. Mom isolates away from Kevin. The dad, right? He's like this fun guy, he's a nice guy, but you see him constantly avoiding conflict. He avoids conflict with his son, he avoids conflict with his brother, he avoids conflict with his wife. When everything happens and all falls, like he just pushes it away. He isolates, even while being in the middle of it. Or we indulge, right? Yeah, why shouldn't I get an extra large Frappuccino? Why shouldn't I eat a handful of chocolate? Why shouldn't I get more chips and queso? Why shouldn't I have that extra glass of wine? Nothing wrong with any of those things and those moderations, but you know what I'm talking about. We just go overboard. Our response in that selfishness is then to indulge. So we either push everybody away, we indulge, or we placate. In other words, we try to make other people around us happy. Right? And we're like whack-a-mole with everybody's complaints. So we either leave, or we go numb, or we try to control the situation, because placation is trying to control. And that's what we do. And it's no wonder if that's our strategy to respond to stress and disorder in the world around us, especially in the holidays, that the holidays only get more amped up and more stressful. Because your best strategy here is to somehow either leave, go numb, or control it. And none of that leads to enjoying it. And none of that looks like what the Bible calls shalom, or wholeness, or togetherness, or when everything good feels right. Because leaving, growing numb, or becoming, or controlling, none of those sound like peace, love, or joy, do they? James knew about this. James was the brother of Jesus. And it's always a fascinating thing, because you have to think like James didn't think Jesus was God until Jesus came back from the dead. Like, like, what would your sibling have to do for them to convince you that they were God? That's what Jesus had to do for James. So the whole time, James is probably like, just take your nose. Healing on the Sabbath, right? Like, he's just he has his, like, list, and then all of a sudden he's like, wait a minute. Big brother is God. Oh, okay. So then he's writing to a group of people, and what has happened in this situation is some people have, they talked good, or they prayed well. They put the right emphasis on the right syllables so everything sounded cooler when they said it. But these people got kind of prideful, and they were kind of creating division. They were like, hey, we're better than these people. And so now there's all this strife, all this bitterness, discord, disorder is happening. The shalom is evaporating. So then James writes this letter. Put his name on it, James. Chapter 3, verse 13 says this: if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it. Now this, just to be clear, is not go live a very moral life. Never do anything wrong. That's not what he has in mind. He says, prove it by living an honorable life. And when they're talking about honor, they're talking about like you're doing works of service that are just so generous and so kind that you're building this shalom in the world that everybody looks at that and they go, hey, you know what? That person, they sometimes mess up. They sometimes say the wrong thing. They don't have their moral life together. But man, are they loving. Man, are they merciful. Man, are they generous. That's what he's talking about. So he says, hey, like if you're claiming something but you're not backing it up, then you're missing it. Prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with humility that comes through wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous, and there is selfish ambition in your heart, in other words, if you're jealous and selfish, don't cover up the truth by boasting or lying. In other words, hey, if you're selfish, admit it. If you get envious or jealous of other people, admit it. It doesn't make you a bad person to admit what's already true about you. It makes you a person on their way to being healed or finding hope. That's why you do that. So it's that, hey, if this is where your heart's at, just admit it, but don't lie about it. Verse 15, for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. In other words, the way God thinks about the world, the way God thinks the world works is not through jealousy or selfishness. In other words, God who created the world and created shalom and made us to live in shalom and have this relationship with him, that God thinks that selfishness is not the path to happiness. Then we have this weirdly small slide. I'm sorry about that. Such things are earthly and unspiritual and demonic. Selfishness and jealousy, they're earthly, they're unspiritual, they're demonic. Now, to kind of clarify this, what he's saying is this: such things are common. Because remember, back then, the way that they thought about the world, they thought the world was round. Most of the history has thought the world is round. It's only recently flat earthers are weird. Okay. But they thought the world existed in a snow globe, right? In the snow globe world, God was above the dome, and we were in between the ground and the dome. And what he says when he says it's earthly and unspiritual, what he's saying is, hey, this is common. This is how humans live. This is dirt thinking, not God-like thinking. Such things are common. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, wherever there's selfishness and envy, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. Wherever there's selfishness, you're going to find chaos. And this is going to be a problem for us that are trying to pursue peace in the midst of a disordered holiday season. Because if our strategy is me time, then what's going to end up happening is we're just going to create more disorder. And you know that feeling. You know that feeling of going into your room, having some me time. I feel good. And then opening the door and then like like a wave, like a tidal wave. All the chaos hits you again, and it's now intensified because you weren't there maybe to help referee or whatever, or maybe you just didn't have your guards up, and then all that little shalom and peace that you've kind of gathered together with your time, with your podcast, with whatever it is. I know because I know, right? I do that. Okay, like it all gets blown away, just evaporated. Our door swings open, and all the neighbor kids like pour through as if like a school bus had just dropped them off. I hear toys getting poured out. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go mow the lawn now. Okay. I know because I know. But, there's a but, that's good. But the wisdom from above, so this goes outside, the wisdom from outside the snow globe. The wisdom from God is first of all pure, and it's shalom loving. It's peace loving. God's wisdom actually seems to have a way of bringing the world together and creating peace. And it's gentle at all times, or meek at all times. And it's willing to yield to others. And it's full of mercy. And if you're a Jew and you heard the word mercy, you certainly didn't think that game like you played when you were a kid. You didn't think like mercy rule in baseball. No. You thought the word chesed, which was the Jewish word for active love. So God ahavas his people. He loves them the way we would adore someone. But then he cheseds them. He supplies them, supports them, carries them. And so what James is saying is, hey, the wisdom from above, God's wisdom, is full of this love that's active and it's organizing and is bringing good in the world. And the fruit, it's full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. And it shows no favoritism, or it doesn't judge. There's no judgment there. And it's always sincere. And for those who are peacemakers, it's a phrase we use a lot here because it comes from this, Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers. And we talked about this, that in an ancient world, when Jesus was saying this, he wouldn't have said peacemakers, and he wouldn't even said the Greek word for peace, irene, he would have said shalom builders. And a peacemaker isn't somebody who runs in and goes, everybody just calm down. No. Right, to make peace is to like assemble IKEA furniture. There's way more pieces than you thought there should be. And you're probably going to put it together the wrong way a couple of times. But we're here to be shalom builders. So James picks up his big brother's language and he says this: those who are shalom builders will plant seeds of shalom and reap harvests of rightness or righteousness. In other words, they're going to plant seeds of peace, and they're going to experience the joy of the world feeling like it's all in its right spot. Right? And we see this in Home Alone. Because after Kevin gets his hey, I have it all to myself, and he runs around and he's screaming, and the toboggan goes down the steps and right through the front door, which actually doesn't line up angle-wise, I know. After he orders the pizza with just cheese, right? After he has that moment, there's something else missing. And you remember what he starts doing? He starts going to the store. He figures out how to do the laundry. I'm 35, 36, what did I say earlier? I'm 36. I still haven't figured out how to do laundry. And he starts ordering the world around him. He starts planting seeds of shalom, and he starts reaping a togethered world. And it culminates in that moment where he's sitting in the church with the snow shovel guy who finds out he's just an old man. He's not a killer. And it all starts to come together. The pieces start to settle. Yeah, it's that moment. Our path to peace, the one that is common amongst humans, is selfishness. That's what we often do. I've had enough. I'm going to do this. I'm going to control the situation. I'm just going to numb out from the situation. I'm going to eat more, drink more, whatever, or I'm going to just isolate. I'm going to peace out. But God's path to peace is wisdom. Now, this is a technical term. Wisdom is not just knowing the right thing to do and when to do it. That's part of it for sure. We all have that person who's wise, and we go and we talk to them, and we're like, hey, Sammy, you're wise. Give me some advice on finances or on my golf swing or how to get through this difficult situation with my kids or whatever it is. But God's wisdom, the wisdom that the Bible talks about, really deals with this. Because remember, James talks about God's wisdom in the world's wisdom. So in James's mind, there's two types of wisdom. But wisdom is how you see the world and your response to it. That is how James sees it. And so what he's saying to them is, hey, you need to see the world the way God sees the world and then respond to the world the way God responds to the world. That's your way through this. That's your path to peace. When you see the world the way God sees it, you will do what God does. And so the question this morning is not where does the disorder come from, but what kind of world are you living in? When you think about this world, when you're sitting in a long line, when somebody says something and you cannot believe they said that, or they post something and you can't believe you haven't unfollowed that person, right? When the turkey catches fire, whatever it is, and you take that deep breath and you go, what kind of world am I living in? Am I living in a world where I have to just muscle it up, try really, really hard, and to control everything? Am I living in a world where it's just sequential, and if you do X, then Y is going to come, and you just set them up like dominoes, and chaos and disorder never, ever happens? Who's in charge of the world as you see it? Is the world good? Is it bad? Is it nothing? How do you look at this world? And what's the goal in your mind? Is the goal just to get the most toys and then die and then you win? Even though all the toys stay here and you go somewhere else? Is the goal just to have as much fun and just to soak it in as much as you? Is the goal just to have good kids who I guess will have good kids who will have good kids? What's the scoreboard? Are there rules? Does your view of the world look like just a bunch of different Monopoly games going on? And that person's trying, like that family's playing their Monopoly game, we're playing theirs, and there are rules, and when we see people stealing from the bank, we're going to call them out, but they kind of got away with it, so maybe I'll kind of fudge some of those. Like, what's most important in this world? Like, these are all questions that we're struggling with. What kind of world is it? Because wisdom depends. Now, the way I think God sees the world is this. I believe that God sees the world as disordered good. That when God looks out on all of our dealings, when he looks at us getting pulled over for running a red light or a speeding ticket or something, when he looks at long lines, when he looks at eye rolls that hopefully your spouse didn't see, when he feels when he sees all that, I think he looks out and he just sees disordered good. And isn't that the theme with Home Alone? I mean, it opens in this magnificent house. We've all wondered, where is it? I grew up in Texas, so that house has in Chicago. And I remember I was like, is every house in Chicago like that? I didn't know. Snow was weird. It was all crazy to me. It opens this house, and it's a big family, and there's so much going on. And where are they going for Christmas? Paris. Well, that sounds horrible. And so there's this big family, and they all are in each other's lives, and they have nice things, and it's chaos, but there's a lot of good things. It's chaos, but it's really good, nice stuff. It's disordered good. And I think when God looks out on the world, he sees this disordered good. There's so many good things going on. They just seem to be out of place. And if you think about the creation story, this is how it works. There's a void. God created something, and he called it good. Void, creation, good. Void, creation, good. Right? The earth starts, it is formless, and God creates light and dark. But then he filled the day, or then he created day and night. Then he put the sun during the daytime and the moon at night. He created the seas, which is great, but then there was a void, so he put fish in them. He created land, there was a void, so he put animals on them. He created the skies, there was a void, he put birds in there. And every step is good. But then something very bad happens in the story. Adam and Eve decide that they don't like the way things are working out. They don't like the order of things. So Eve hears from the snake, hey, why don't you eat this apple or this fruit, and then maybe you will be, well, you'll be like God. You'll go up a level. She's like, that sounds good. And she thought, and here's the thing, she looked at it and she thought to herself, this is good to make me wise. It's earthly wisdom. It was good for her, but not for others. And so it gets disordered. And nowhere in the Bible do they call it evil. They just call it disordered good. So God sees the world as disordered good. So what do we do about that? Well, our response to disordered good is to reorder the good. Our response, so if we see the world as disordered good, in other words, if Kevin's mom sees what's going on in the craziness of her house, and she goes, okay, what's going on? Well, Kevin doesn't want to sleep on a mattress with his cousin who's going to wet the bed. That's a good thing, because if he wanted the opposite of that, that's weird. Yeah, okay. So Kevin just wants some space, and she just wants to have a wonderful trip, and the kids are just excited about going. They're excited to be around family. Like, there's just a bunch of good things going on in the house. It's just out of disorder. But instead of maybe isolating or indulging or trying to control the situation, if she just would have leaned in and said, well, Kevin, you just seem out of order. If her response was to reorder the good. And if our response in that chaos that's coming in this holiday season is to just reorder the good. To realize that good things are wanted by all parties. And to make space for it. My response is to reorder the good because that's what God is doing. There's this word that gets a little lost in translation. It shows up frequently in the New Testament. It's the word recreate or remake. And what the earliest believers thought about this Jesus guy, what they thought about the gospel, was that Jesus was remaking the whole thing. There's even this line where he says, so good, he says, they ask him, Jesus, is this now when you're going to restore the kingdom? In other words, is this now when you reorder everything? And Jesus says, just wait, it's coming. But you're part of it. Our hope for peace this evening, or this season, is to reorder the good. And I think about that when Jesus took this meal with his disciples before he was betrayed. And he sat down in a room with them. And he thought to himself, these are my friends. And how can I help them understand what the kingdom's really like? Because I don't want to point, hey, a kingdom is like having a king or having an emperor. It's not a CEO structure. It's not top down. No, what he said is, hey, no, what it is it's like a meal. And so what he did is he took the cup. A cup that was used for hope, and he repurposed it. First, he took the bread. He took the bread and he broke it. And he says, this is my body that is broken, like all the disorder in the world. Our attempts for shalom and other people, and one person was selfish, so then you were selfish, and then another person was selfish, then your neighbor was selfish, and before you know it, it was just kind of this domino effect, and then now everything seems broken because some people are super rich and some people are super poor. Some people are super well-liked and some people are lonely. But he doesn't leave it there, right? He gets the cup. He pours out the wine. And he says, this is my blood poured out as a promise of reorder. That's what it was. Poured out for the forgiveness of sins. In other words, all the disorder, all the chaos, all the selfishness is going to be released, forgiven, covered, erased. It was poured out as a new covenant, a new set of rules, a new way of doing the world. It's a new reorder. And then whenever we come together and celebrate, whenever we think about Jesus, we think about these two things, the broken and the promise coming together. That our shalom is in this, not in trying to conquer the chaos, but to participate with the God who from the very beginning made a way for hope to endure and for us to experience the deepest level of fullness possible. That's our hope. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for today, and I thank you for the opportunity to be with my friends. God, I pray that this Christmas season will feel hopeful. And Lord, I pray that we would be equipped as we move forward this year to pursue peace, to feel connected. God, with the disordered, selfish parts of us, can we just admit that we're selfish sometimes? And God, would you just reorder us? And Lord, would you help us understand how we can help to bring the world back into your order? That'd be great. That's our hope. In Christ's name, amen.
Jesus, I love you. I love you. Your name is like honey on my lips. Your spirit's like water to my soul. Your word is a lamp unto my feet. Jesus, I love you. I love you. Jesus, I love you. I love you. Jesus, I love you. I love you. I love you. Jesus, I love you. I love you. I love you. Jesus, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you right now and forevermore. Jesus.
Anointed One. God, you are the maker of our peace. Will we not be caught up in thinking that we make our own peace out of dirt? What are we but just dirt and breath? So God, we recognize and hope in you. It's in Christ's name, amen. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I am super excited about the rest of our series. We're talking about the movie Elf next week, which is one of my favorites. Might be my favorite currently right now. It's one of my favorites, and so I'm excited about that. That movie's 17 years old, by the way. So by all means, please watch Elf next week. That's part of your homework. Hopefully you're continuing to read the Via Advent with us. Like, that's just an incredible book. It's just so rich. I don't know if you guys like to do this, not to bring this back to queso, but I like to leave my chips in there where they get really soggy. Okay, maybe a little too much information, but that's what it feels like reading that book. Like the Christmas just seems to get into your bones. So hopefully you're enjoying that. If you need a copy of that book, feel free to pick one up online. If you guys want a copy, we'll be happy to deliver one, or you can swing by the church sometime. We just love that. Well, we are super excited just about this Christmas season. There's so much going on. There's a Christmas brunch after Christmas happening. It's going to be great. But we always end with this, not announcements, but with a benediction. With the simple thought that we are all invited to be agents of blessing. And if you remember, when God called Abraham, he says, I'm going to bless you to bless others. And what if that's the secret to shalom? What if instead of selfishness, I'm going to bless me to bless me, then we just hope there's enough blessing to go around? There's something about love that multiplies, right? And so there's something about blessing that multiplies as well. What if I could just bless others and then experience that blessing? So if nothing else, church should be a place where you are blessed and you bless others. So please stand. We always read this together because we are all agents of blessing. No one of us has the special authority or power to bless others. We are all invited into that goodness. Thank God. Let's read this with me. May the peace of Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Y'all have a fabulous week. Love you guys so much. Can't wait to see you next week. And teenagers, 5th grade through 12th grade, bring a friend. There's prizes for friends. There's prizes for showing up. And there's kolaches galore. Is this heaven? All right, we'll see you guys next week. God bless.